All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Mobility Field Day 5. We are super excited because I think today, once again, we're going to move the bar, raise the bar on the industry. And for us, that all starts with Marvis. Marvis, our AI engine, is going to get a massive facelift today at MFD5. We're super excited for having all of you to join and listen in on this. So once again, my name is Sudhir Matta. I'm the VP of Products here at Mist Juniper. I came from the Mist team and now run the entire enterprise product management for the EX switches, the SRX WAN portfolio, and of course, the Mist Wi-Fi portfolio. So I have two other elite presenters here in the initial section. Of course, Bob Friday, our CTO co-founder, the visionary elite in the industry. Bob's going to start off with you will actually find this slide very, very familiar. It's one thing to have a vision. It's one thing to actually have a bold vision in 2016 and be executing year after year. If you go back to MFD2, our slide on our vision is almost exactly the same thing. We've now got fancier graphic designers. Outside of that, the vision was exactly the same. So Bob now is actually leading the enterprise CTO position for all of Juniper's enterprise portfolio. We're super excited about that. And another very, very, very good presenter is our head of data science, Dr. Jixing Wang. Jixing leads our data science team, a stellar cast of characters, and we're going to go deep and we're going to go wide with AI and ML and the transformation we're bringing for the wired wireless WAN network. So without further ado, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you to speak to our vision here a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Sudhir. And you know what? It is great to be back Mobility Field Day 5 here. As Sudhir mentioned, this is the premier event where we like to announce the latest and greatest. And seeing all the old faces here is great. And for those new to the Mist journey, one of the original inspirations for Mist was really Watson playing Jeopardy. And that's when Suji and I really realized that this AI stuff was more than just marketing hype, right? When we saw that they could actually build a solution that could play Jeopardy at championship levels on par with champions like Kim Jennings, that's when we realized that we could build something that really could answer questions on par with networking domain experts. And really the first step on that journey was really to making sure we had the data we needed to answer questions such as, why is Steve having a problem with his internet connectivity? Why are the associates in the store in Phoenix complaining about their wireless experience? Why are the robots in the distribution center not connecting to the network correctly? And really, that is why we built an access point that could really send us back the synchronous and asynchronous user state data we need to really answer those questions. So when you look at the beginnings of this journey, it's really about getting the data you need to answer the questions that user IT people need to get answered. And that's really the change in the paradigm we've seen over the last 20 years, right? 15 years ago at Airspace, it was all about training and controllers and managing network elements devices. We're now moving into a paradigm where it's really about helping enterprises manage the end-to-end user experience of what's connected to their network. And when you look at some of our competitors, they talk about global data and the quantity. And I will tell you, after 6 years of working on Marvis, global data is valuable, but it's really about the quality of data. No two sites are different. If you train an ML model with global data, that ML model is not going to work at a particular site. So it's really about getting the data you need for the particular network you're working on. Each network is unique. So when you look at what's going on after you have the data, the next critical part of this journey is really around putting that data into a framework that really Marvis can use to answer questions. And what you saw in the first version of Marvis was we built an SLE framework. And that framework was really about allowing us to use things like mutual information that really allowed us to figure out when a user is having a bad experience, what network feature was causing that bad experience. And that's what allowed us in the distribution centers to figure out that that reader was actually the problem related to that reader was down to a particular OS, right? Where you want to be able to look across 50 network features and figure out which feature is causing a problem. And what you're going to see in today's session is really the introduction of a new framework, graph theory, graph database, And really, this framework is going to allow us to basically take the topology of a network and basically start being able to correlate user experience problems with elements in your network problems. And so this is what's going to allow us to start answering even more questions or find root causes to problems like when that person changes the configuration of the router on the other side of the network and it causes a problem on the user experience. How would you ever figure that out? Someone in 2 buildings away screwed something up. This is where Marvis can now basically do the correlation and basically figure out that that router configuration is what's stopping your user from connecting to the network. And finally, the next piece we're announcing today is really around this conversational interface. And this is really a paradigm shift of doing away with dashboards. You know, we saw the industry move from CLI to dashboards. Dashboards are becoming way too numerous right now. You know, they are not effective in actually solving network problems because networks are too complicated and the data is too much. These conversational interfaces are what's going to allow Marvis to really become an integral part of the IT team. It's what's going to allow Marvis to really gain the trust of the IT department and become a virtual member of that team. And then finally, you're going to see on the self-driving action is really putting how customer support is being turned upside down. You know, we are basically taking the customer support model, the days of you trying to argue with your vendor on whether or not it's a hardware or software problem, those days are over. You know, now it's going to be more about Marvis sending you an email and letting you know that you have an hardware problem and that you should RMA that piece of equipment back. You know, so I'm happy to be here today. A lot of exciting things coming your way. With that, back to you, Sudhir.
No, thank you, Bob. We're super excited. So what I'm gonna do is sort of level set baseline on sort of where Marvis is today. I'm gonna literally take 1 minute to explain Marvis, and then we're going to throw the gauntlet down. It is time. Dashboards are for the last decade. The next decade of networking is going to be through an AI-powered conversational assistant. And here we go. Our competitors are going to launch this a couple of years from now, so take notice. So step one, let's start with Marvis as it stands today. Right? Marvis as it stands today is basically, you ask sort of a natural language question to Marvis and say, hey, what's going on? You know, what's happening with this particular site? You know, what's happening with a certain user? And Marvis does the legwork for you, right? Marvis is actually, you know, putting the picture together. Was it DHCP? Was it Radius? Was it DNS? Was it the network? Was it the WAN? Right? Marvis was playing that network assistant for you, right? And you can ask, you know, who's having a bad Wi-Fi day? We can answer without people opening support tickets. We can answer, you know, who's having a bad Wi-Fi day, and if so, why are they having a bad Wi-Fi day? One thing you will notice, the truism in every single Mist network that is out there, and our customers, hopefully you're on Twitter, can vouch for it. Every single place Mist goes in, we cut down their ticket volume dramatically. I will give you 2 public examples. ServiceNow, there's a video on this. There was a 97% reduction in the number of user open support tickets coming into the IT help desk from the day we displaced their Cisco network and went to a global pervasive Mist Wi-Fi network. That is the power of AI at work for you. There are many other customers in the retail space, Gap. They had a significant, more than 90% reduction in the number of point of sale errors that their point of sale systems were complaining about, that their network was not available. We were able to reduce that, right? So
question, Sudhir.
Yes,
Sudhir,
sir.
question, if I could.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're mentioning Cisco and replacing them and problems go away and kind of attributing AI to being the solution. I just have to ask, are you seeing bad Cisco deployments and you know, Mist just got deployed better? Are you seeing networks that went in incorrectly, or are you saying that it's purely technology under the hood of Mist that made all of these problems go away versus the technology under the hood of Cisco?
Lee, outstanding question. Thank you for interrupting. I'm hoping the format, Tom, is that we do get interrupted. So I appreciate it, Lee, for starting that off. So number one, is, of course, there are a lot of bad designs out there, right? And you know it, we all know it in the industry, but that's really not the point, right? So step one, and we're going to talk about this, Lee, more specifically. So there is this notion that we're going to address on something we call self-driving network, right? It's the epitome of marketing hyperbole terms that are out there, right? Here's what we do that actually contributes to the lower tickets, right? So if you look at a Cisco network, Aruba network, any of the legacy networks, there are problems that are happening that are intrinsic to the network. As an example, beacons get dropped, multicast gets dropped, Ethernet gets stuck, radios get stuck, right? All of these types of things today, you have to manually detect them, remediate them. I know of a customer, a very large one, that sort of every 3 days they reboot all their Cisco APs just because, right? Because it sort of clears out a bunch of this stuff. What we are doing is we are actually baselining the experience of every single access point. You're going to see in specific detail that literally we are going to put out on notice to all our competitors, what do we self-drive when we say we self-drive? And so I would attribute the number one reason why the Mist networks have fewer support tickets is we actually remediate problems in line as we are learning, right? The difference between why couldn't a controller do that and why can a cloud do that is the controllers, it's Groundhog Day every day. They just do not have the memory to store what happened, 2 days ago, 5 days ago, and be able to, look at that event holistically over a week or a month time. The cloud can do that, right? Controllers forget. And that's where we are able to baseline and come back and remediate. I would say if there is one thing that attributes to our networks working better, that's self-driving.
I may add, Lee, Cisco and Aruba are tough competitors. But what we're finding, if you talk to Mist customers, what you'll hear is that they have more visibility than they've ever had before. And that's really because of AI and Marvis. It's not directly because of AI. It's because to answer those questions, we had to get all the data back into the cloud. And for the first time now, the same data that Marvis needs to answer those questions is the same data an IT guy needs, right? And so that's one thing you'll find when talking to Mist customers. They really appreciate having the data they need to answer questions, even if Marvis is not answering them yet. They appreciate the fact that Marvis is answering, but first of all, they appreciate the fact that the data is in the cloud now for them to look at.
Sudhir, I've got a question. Mm-hmm. Since you've mentioned them a handful of times now, something I brought up last year at Mobility Field Day was there is still no documentation about how a Wi-Fi professional is supposed to design a Mist network. We were committed back then that would show up shortly. To the best of my knowledge, there is zero public-facing information about what we as Wi-Fi professionals need to do in order to make sure that when these networks go in, they're fully supported by the Mist support team. What's your take on when you're going to enable the people who have to actually go out and build these networks and getting them documentation they need in order to do the designs that they need to do? If I compare, again, you've brought up Cisco and Aruba several times, I can go to either one of those folks and say, give me a validated design guide that's 500 pages long. I can get a Bible for how to design these networks. I've got nothing on Mist.
Sam, I think that's a fair point. I think first, the fact that it requires 500 pages is speaking to something, but that notwithstanding, your point is valid. Here's what we are doing, right? Most of our customers follow standard sort of, best practice Wi-Fi design. We use Ekahau extensively in almost all of our deployments. We take Ekahau designs. Ryan last time spoke about how we have integrated Ekahau designs to be able to seamlessly be imported into the Mist dashboard. However, it's fair. I think it needs to be out there, and we need to make a statement about it. So we actually, that's a good one, Sam. I think that's on us, and we will do that. For the most part, Sam, our partners and customers, they follow standard design best practices and been delivering good networks. But having a document out there is a completely fair ask. Thank you. and we should do that. So how about this? Wes, if in the next month we don't do it, we have a problem. So, and we got to deliver it on a platter to all the MFD delegates. 1 month.
Hey, Sudhir, this is Wes. We actually do have some best practices out there that we make recommendations. Sam, you may have seen it. It's from it actually was originally from NextWorks in November, but it's we do have a best practices guide out there with our recommendations.
So I did check the Mist documentation page. There is some stuff on BLE and beacons and locationing stuff, but there's not a lick of stuff on Mist.com that shows me where to place APs or how to place APs or design cell edges or overlap or any of that stuff.
Sure.
I think, Wes, it's a fair. I mean, the point is, I don't care if it exists. If people can't find it, it doesn't exist, right? So I think it's a completely fair ask, Sam, and it's on us. So thank you. Was there another question? If not, I'll keep going. Okay, so this is sort of where Marvis is today, right? This is something I think a lot of you have seen and a lot of you have experienced, and really we appreciate a lot of the feedback along the process as well. Now, where we believe where the next generation of interactions are going to be is in sort of a conversational interface. So without further ado, let's actually talk about what does that mean, right? So this is sort of the new Marvis, if I may. So Marvis is someone and something now is joining your team. Marvis is a new member on your team that you can actually work with, right? So I'm gonna walk slowly on all the things that are happening here, right? So the idea is, let's say when I first log in, I see at a global level, we have something we call Marvis Actions. The Marvis Actions come together and we say, hey, Jishings, welcome to Marvis. You have 13 things that we want you to act on, and do you want to take care of one of those things, or are you coming in to have a conversation about something else, right? And so then Jishing can say, hey, you know what, what's happening with this unhealthy AP as an example. Then essentially, we're saying, hey, we've used sort of log mining, and we're actually going to show you a specific example of what we're talking about here. Our largest customer is about 100,000 APs. At the scale of 100,000 access points, every single access point, every single crash file, every single log message is going to the cloud. We put that through a log mining engine, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And it comes back and says, hey, I looked at this one AP, and this one AP, by the way, for the 100,000 AP customer, today, if you log in, you will see that they have less than 10 issues, truly at that scale, right? And so now you can say, okay, this AP is unhealthy. We've determined, based on everything happening locally on that AP, we believe there is actually an updated image that can make this AP healthier based on what all is going on with the AP and the things that we're seeing. So now you could say, hey, Marvis, Marvis is going to say, do you want me to upgrade? And the user has a choice. You could say yes, upgrade, or no, don't. And right here, essentially, this is now, instead of you hunting and pecking and finding where you go find the AP and upgrade the AP and whatever, you could say, yeah, get that AP upgraded, life's good, and let me know if once the upgrade is done, right? Simple stuff. Marvis is now like an assistant to each member of your team, and you're working with Marvis. A simple difference, just for an example, there are a lot of chatbots that are out there, and ultimately that's technology talk to a human that may help you a little bit here and there or not. This is you. For the first time in the networking industry, you're interacting with the AI assistant live, and you're getting data from that. You can ask, say, hey, I'm having some issues. I don't know which user it is. We'll show you what are the top users having issues. And we could say, hey, let's go look at this one particular user, and he's having some DHCP issues. Do you want to see when it started? Yeah, I got it. It started, Wednesday on July 22nd. And maybe, you want to see more data. We will take you contextually to exactly that user and see every single failure that has happened. Ultimately, if you take away one thing, what is so fundamentally, foundationally different about what Mist has done architecturally, what Bob and team have done, we've pivoted the entire company from day one on the user experience. Everybody says that. Everybody says we're about user experience. Nobody is at the granularity we have.
All right, one more question, Sudhir.
Yeah.
On all the goodness that is Marvis and with the Juniper acquisition, how deep into the wired network is Marvis going these days? Is that something you're going to cover? And is it, how tightly integrated is, excuse me, it feels like a wireless problem, but it's really not. And, how granular into switch configs and, router ACLs and other points of potential problem does Marvis go?
Yeah, so we're gonna address that in just 2 slides, Lee. And the short answer is today Marvis is covering Wi-Fi, switching, and the new thing that we're announcing at MFD is WAN routing from the Juniper SRXs and the Juniper EXs. It does not speak to a Cisco switch or a third-party router, but if it is a Juniper stack, we're getting data directly from the EXs and the SRXs. That picture is complete, and that's what we're launching today.
What I would add is the graph database that James is going to be talking about here, Ray. That is really part of integrating both the switch and the router into Marvis now. Because for the first time now, Marvis will be able to take events from each network element in that topology. So like if that switch has a bad cable, that event will now be correlated to a user experience problem. So that's the beginnings of bringing the switch and the router into the Marvis framework. And that graph database is a key part of being able to get the topology of the network and the elements in that network into a way Marvis can actually analyze them.
Yeah.
So that's good. If I had another question, I apologize. So we brought up NLP at the last Mobility Field Day, and that it was far from, the N in NLP was far from natural. Can you pull up the Marvis dashboard and say, can you show me where LTEU is impacting my network now?
Yeah, we have that exact demo coming up, Sam.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the other piece that just flew by here is if you say, hey, I'm not satisfied with what you're telling me, would you want me to open a support ticket? And if you said, yes, I want to open a support ticket, Marvis will just open the support ticket for you. You don't have to go hunt and peck, where the support interaction is and all that good stuff. That's built natively, right? So this is, and you're going to see more demos around this on the conversation interface as we progress throughout the day. So specifically, actually, Sam, thank you. A great point on the N in NLP is how natural is that, and where is that going? Where are we going there? The next 2 slides are exactly that. Jisheng, I'm going to ask you to speak to this slide.
Yeah. Yes. So this is a quick question, and you can see this is a high-level architecture of Marvis conversational interface. There are 3 things I want to quickly highlight here. From the left to right, first is this unified interface. You can see from the demos we just showed about all different use cases that this interface can handle, for the day-to-day network operational work. And this is going to be the single interface that will just like acting like a team member, for all of your day-to-day network operation. And if Marvis fails to fulfill your requirement, it will open a support ticket to you with all of the context. So just think of the Google. There may be 1 million things Google can do, but at the end, Google just give you a small black box to deal with. No one needs to read a 500 page how to use Google, right? This is exactly the user experience we want to bring into the networking world. The second is the NLL engine. That's a very good question. This is, as you may know, one big challenge of developing chatbots. There are many of the bots in the world, in the market today. One common challenge is how to collect the feedback, because the AI needs to improve. Feedback is critical. So, most of the users, if you just ask them to give you feedback, 5-star of this, most of the users tend not to give the feedback, or only give the biased feedback when they are dissatisfied, right? So currently with this new NLU engine in the middle, we actually build in an ML-based segment tagging engine that can automatically tag or monitor each turn of each conversation. So in this way, Marvis can really continue learning and improving based on your user interaction, but not relying on your manual feedback. Last but not least, this Marvis interface is different than any of the general purpose interface in the market that just answer your question about the general information. No, this is fully powered by the Marvis intelligence we have built for each customer over years. For example, we're baseline each your AP, each of the AP doing the anomaly detection, this, like Bob mentioned, this temporal graph, all of this are used in the background to empower this Marvis interface.
Awesome. So actually, to sort of summarize what Jixing was saying, but before I do that, maybe Nick, did you have a quick question? Sorry, we didn't pause for you, please.
Oh, no worries. I was just trying to figure out the when you were setting up that support ticket there, I saw Zendesk and all that pop up. Is that the customer support desk, or is that with Mist support, or what are the options there that we're doing?
It won't say Zendesk going forward. That's just internal. It's basically you're opening a ticket with the Mist support team. And so just like you opened today a ticket with Mist support team, if you are going down a rabbit hole and you're not satisfied with the Marvis answer, or you're not getting anywhere and the issue is becoming hot, you could just say, hey, I want to open a support ticket. What Marvis will do is it'll package your entire conversation. That was just the history of the conversation you had, and send that to the support agent. So nobody has to ask you what user again, and what are we talking about, and what data. I mean, we don't do that today. We actually obviously have a lot more intent, but even the history of the conversational interface, the conversation you've just had will be packaged part of that. Right?
I've got a question, Sudhir. Can you speak to how you're not trying to take away wireless engineers' jobs with your Marvis right now? And just with that said, do you see customers that just blindly, and I know this isn't just a single vendor issue, but just blindly accept the recommendations that are given to them? Do you see that people are still required to have RF knowledge? Obviously, that's kind of a loaded question, but because you should have RF knowledge and stuff like that before deploying anything like this. But are you seeing where people still are like blindly taking recommendations and then causing problems because they don't necessarily understand what Marvis is offering to them? Are you seeing any issues like that?
Yeah, so thank you, Mitch. So basically, first, there are far fewer IT engineers than problems out there, right? You all will admit that, there's you take a higher ed, you take an enterprise, there's more users, more devices, more applications every day, and IT is not growing at that same scale, right? So Marvis is truly there to augment on that team, be a part of that team. Number two, Marvis is never wrong. And I want to make that statement. Marvis is never wrong. Why? Because it's data. It's actually understanding data and interpreting data. It is not making up a lot of the data. Marvis isn't always right, meaning we may not get everything, right? So there is definitely white space, and Bob was going to talk about our efficacy. Again, this is how IBM Watson was built, and it is about measuring the efficacy and holding yourself accountable and being public about it. And we've been public. We've presented, at last MFD and the previous MFDs exactly what the efficacy is. Today, our efficacy is at 65%. Basically 65% of the support tickets that come in, something north of 60%, we actually are able to, Marvis is able to get that answer. The remaining 40%, Marvis has the data for it in some of the cases, but so we're growing up. But what it says based on actual factual data. I will never say, hey, there was a DHCP pool exhaustion when there isn't one, right? Where, you have a bad password when there isn't one, right? So that's where I feel very strongly that, people are not chasing, rabbit holes based on Marvis leading them the wrong path, right? Doesn't happen. Right.
Perfect. Thank you, Sudhir. That was a great answer to a poorly worded question.
No. Very good. Very good.
I do have one more that goes with what Mitch had, and I'll try to be quick because I know that your time is short. But so a lot of times, out in the dashboard world, we're told about all the problems we must have. You got to have problems. We got a dashboard. Damn it, by our dashboard, you have to have problems. And a lot of times the dashboards are just hyper aggressive in calling everything a problem when in fact they're not reproducible, they're explainable, they become the problem. What is the story with Marvis quest for very good networks versus perfect? How razor edge is Marvis trying to be in calling out, what are the tolerances, if you will? Is Marvis trying to deliver us good, reliable networks or cutting edge, perfect networks that if you're not cutting edge, you get a lot of false alarms? Hopefully I'm being eloquent enough where you can follow what I'm asking.
I got it. So actually, Lee, so most of our large networks, including, Juniper's own network, what Marvis Action, puts out, you'll see is a very small number. Intentionally, and does that mean we're shooting for perfect and life is so perfect on a campus network or the 100,000 AP network? Absolutely not. Intentionally, when we are in doubt, we actually lean on not calling foul, and we actually lean on being conservative in Marvis Actions, right? So consequently, when Marvis Actions says something is wrong, take it to the bank. We see near 99% accuracy around the ability to get that right. So truly, Marvis Actions, I ask our customers to chime in. I ask our partners to chime in. We take it to the bank when Marvis says something. So that consequently, we will miss some. We're not shooting for perfect because that will raise a lot of, the long tail of problems for you that you may or may not want to address, right? So we're being conservative now.
Sudhir, I have a question about some of the Marvis stuff here too.
Yeah.
So obviously Marvis has come a long way, and using it in production environments now, we're seeing that. So while I appreciate all of this roadmap and what's coming, that's nice. There are some things currently that I'm interested in knowing. Are you guys going to give us a little bit more granularity and depth? For example, if there's an authentication failure with 1X, I don't want to have to dig through a packet capture or dig back through a radius server to understand, is there an EAP type mismatch? Was it a bad password? Is there a certificate that's invalid or missing? Something along those lines. Are you guys going to be kind of bubbling that up for us, make it a little more easy?
That is the goal, Jennifer. I think so we can obviously continue to be better at that. Today, we just say, hey, DAW1X failure and blah, blah, blah. We get you a certain level. What the new sort of engine gives us an opportunity to do is actually have a translator, if I may, on, hey, if this is error code 5 on this EAP transaction, what does that mean? If it is, failure code 17, what does that actually mean for a help desk user? So that's something I think, So that is part of this new step, Jennifer. Yeah. So Jishing, 30 seconds. We are 30 minutes late already. So go very quick because this addresses one of the questions Sam talked about is actually getting the NLU, the natural piece of NLP right. So go ahead.
Yeah, next I will quickly talk about this because that's a very good question. As you may know, this NLP problem has been in the broader industry, not networking, for even longer than the networking problem we have, for decades of the time. So the technology we here use is called transfer learning, and this really helped us. You probably saw from the demo all of these typos, and it's really like true conversation experience. It's not Q&A. You ask a question, we give you answer. No. You are talking with a true intelligent bot. So the principle of the transfer learning can be easily explained by using a simple example of teaching kids. If you have kids and you may still remember the tough time of teaching them some basics of like math, like why 1 = 2. I still experience it every day now because I have a little one in the kindergarten. So, but what if there's some technology which you can transfer really all of your learned math knowledge, including calculus, algebra, to your kids in one night. So your kids can just learn on top of that. Is that cool? This is exactly what the transfer learning is doing in the ML and the NLP world. And this is also the reason why transfer learning is called this standing on the shoulder of the giants. Come back to our Marvis interface. We're actually leveraging the state-of-art natural language understanding framework, which is the same framework used to empower Google Home and Amazon Alexa. Just with this framework, you can see we are really truly delivering the best user experience a true AI solution is supposed to do. So, and this has reached pretty good accuracy when doing the launch time, even with much of the this interactive training yet.
Awesome. So Bob, I want us to go quick. So I'm going to have you speak to the question Lee asked. How much of this is end to end?
Yeah. So Lee, so what we're doing here, and that's my analogy here, is really around Watson, Jeopardy, self-driving cars. If you look at any of these AI solutions, it's really multiple algorithms to get to championship level. And so what we're seeing here is our graph database framework being introduced. And this is really the framework that's going to allow us to basically bring other network elements into Marvis and the topology. So that graph framework is really capturing the topology of the network from the user all the way to the internet. And what that allows us to do now is whenever there's an event in that switch or that router, we can now correlate that event with temporal correlation back to some user experience. So Ginseng has basically been working on this for the last year. And so this is the latest framework into Marvis. And this is what's going to take us another step closer to getting to that 90% championship level we're trying to get to. This will allow us to basically find the root cause to all those misconfigured devices in the network that somehow screwed up someone's user experience.
Yeah, so in the spirit of time, I'm actually going to show you what does that mean, right? So the idea here is you can ask, hey, Abhi's having a Teams issue, right? Abhi's having a bad Teams call. We will come back and say, these are the 5 Teams calls or Zoom calls or Skype calls, whatever it is that you're doing, and essentially put the picture together for that specific call across the Wi-Fi, switching, and the routing environment, right? So essentially you could say, hey, there's some Wi-Fi interference during that exact time that happened at that APE. Could that have interfered with that call? And again, and the SRX during that exact time for this flow, for this user, we feel there may have been impact, right? So this is fusing the graph database is nothing but, there's so many edges to this graph here on, is it the window, is it the device, is it the AP, is it the switch, is it the SRX? We're putting all of that together. This is coming and it is end to end as part of this experience. Now,
so let me ask you for the shortest answer, and again, trying to respect your time. I understand, Mist is Juniper, Juniper is Mist. Is there a goal, and I'm guessing roadmap may be off limits, but is there a goal to be compatible with other vendors? Is that something that you can answer?
So Lee, today, on the switching side, we actually have some compatibility with Cisco switching. We actually show some metrics, not at this kind of level. We don't stream data from Cisco switches into the cloud, but we are able to show, a lot of times we go into an environment where the Mist APs are connected to a Cisco switching environment, a Meraki or an Aruba switching environment. From a switching perspective, we bring in 5 vectors that work for any switch. Vector number 1, are my wireless VLANs on that switch or not? We deduce that on any switching environment. Are all these switches running the same version? Just simple stuff. You could do this through SolarWinds or scripting, but we can learn that as well using LLDP, and we do that.
So the answer is yes, Lee. The answer is yes. We want to be able to answer any question, whether it's Juniper boxes or not, right? The goal is basically to make sure Marvis can find the root cause, whether it's a Juniper box, HP, or Cisco box. And so like right now, I'm working in the ONOG in the industry right now, is basically how do we solve the problem, if I have a different SD-WAN router in the network, how do we basically start sharing data? And so right now at ONOG, we're working on how do we virtualize data across different vendors. Right? How does Marvis get access to data from Zoom? How does Marvis get access to data from VeloCloud? So basically, we are basically going to try to virtualize the data across all these vendors, and use the data in place. But the simple answer is yes. Marvis has to be able to work across all network environments. It's not, we don't expect everyone to have Juniper boxes everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Jisheng, we are almost actually at time. But this was an important issue. This was an important conversation on what it is that we do address that contributes to fewer support tickets. So if you can cover this in a minute or so.
Right. Yeah, I will quickly cover this and also come back to just try to summarize the graphs thing, like as Sudhir just showed in that what we call the AIOps demo, right? So if you just think SIX actually give us the flow data. But flow data only has the source IP. How do we know RB had that Teams call? We correlate actually the flow data with our DHCP data, which is from the AP. So we know who owns that IP at that time. And also, we also correlate with the AP data, with the switch data. So this is really the graph database, or the distributed graph data with billions of the nodes to really track the end-to-end network topology for each client and each flow session. So on top of that, this is also this event action framework. Like Bob said, the goal at the end is to bring all different types of the events from this end-to-end network all together. Why? Just because each of these could be the root cause of the user experience problem. And also in addition, Marvis can also take for the high confidence events, Marvis can take proactive actions to remediate the network problem, even before it impacting users. So
yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Finish it that.
Yeah, I think it's Sudhir, you can finish, then I will summarize later.
Yeah, so I think net, let me summarize. One of the things that we have intentionally not done, because I think a lot of people would be interested, but we've intentionally not done, is self-driving actions. You don't find them in our dashboard. Just like, when you're driving in a self-driving car, it's not telling you all the nuances it's doing, all the camera angles it's finding to make a certain decision. We want that to be as simple as possible for network engineers. So the self-driving actions we're going to keep talking about are, AP is healthy, radio is healthy, pre-connection issues, RF issues, config issues. A lot of these are self-driving issues. So if we can't take a self-driving action is when we bubble up to Marvis, right? That's the distinction between our networks and almost every other vendor's network that are out there. Now, Jisheng, I will move you to the next slide here.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, probably this is the answer to some of the question I just heard of. To summarize, the ultimate goal of AIOps is to really simplify the network operational work for the network admin. You don't have to, so some of the vendors build the AIOps by just stacking up different gears. But the problem they have is like they keep them in this disparate silos, and they really let the user to kind of connect the dots. Marvis actually give you this single pane of the glass view of all these end-to-end network problems. So and what we build are all these common framework, a temporal entity graph, event action framework, and finally this new Marvis interface. You don't have to worry about adding van, like even as you asked, how about the third-party vendor? To us, it's the same. As long as you give data, this framework is neutral to any of the vendor. All of this together on top of this cloud-native infrastructure can really guarantee Marvis to provide a seamless user experience across this end-to-end network at the end. So to summarize in one sentence, the goal of the AI is supposed to do all of the complex work and deliver the simplicity for the end user.
Awesome. Thank you, Jishin.
So when is it coming? Thanks to Michael, who actually asked my question to Marvis, show me where LTEU is impacting my network. And Marvis said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah. So, sorry, is the question, when is the conversation interface coming? Or
well, either when is it coming or when can my question be answered?
Got it. So the Marvis conversational interface that we're launching today is going to be, launched to our customers as beta in the next few weeks. It's almost there, and then within Q3 is basically publicly available within this quarter. And I'm going to get to Sam your question on cellular. It's very specific answer there with a demo. So on the self-driving piece, we've talked a lot about this, so I'm going to go quickly on this. Bob, maybe a couple 30 seconds on RRM.
I think the point here is, back in my aerospace days, back then we were doing radio resource management, and it was really about trying to optimize the power between APs and clients. Really, the big change in RRM right now with ML is we're able to use these reinforcement algorithms now to really optimize the user experience. So back when we were doing aerospace 15 years ago, we didn't really have the user state data. Now we actually have the user experience data in their state, and we're actually optimizing the symmetry of the link between the AP and that client. So that's the big addition into the RRM space right now, where AI and ML is really making a difference in our resource management algorithms.
And then the next one here is I'm going to walk you through a specific example of any Wi-Fi vendor that tells you they don't have software issues or hardware issues are flat out lying. And we've always been very forthcoming about it. And so let's take the top column, the top row here. Right? So this is an access point that's been running happy and healthy, and suddenly starting to see a few Ethernet packet drops. Could be a chip issue, a driver issue, a firmware issue, whatever it is, right? So we quickly detect that and remediate it. And if you follow the top row, that problem went away and life is good. This is a problem that happens in wireless networks. I can tell you for sure, because I used to be an access point engineer and wrote the entire access point stack for one of the enterprise vendors. And this happens in every single AP because that's how life works, right? Now, let's say the problem didn't disappear. Let's go to the middle column, middle row here. And the problem was, okay, the AP is good, AP is healthy now, and it came right back up, right? Oh, maybe that is, maybe this is there's a leak happening in memory or something else happening in the software. This is where we apply sort of log mining, and basically we're collecting all these logs from the APs. We're now correlating with, hey, these errors are happening, is it possible that these crashes coming from this AP or logs coming from this AP map to a certain bug that we already know, and then we say, we actually, each of these dots is actually a software or a firmware issue. And it's like, it maps to that particular bug. We go to our Jira version, and then we come back and say, you know what? We've determined we can actually remediate this problem based on, we've already found this bug elsewhere, and we can fix it for you using an image upgrade, right? And so here's another example of the same graph. Let's say, there's a certain number of APs where we've auto-remediated, life is good. A certain number of APs, this is, by the way, a real factual graph. We just redacted the Y column here. But where the firmware upgrade fixed it. The last mile here is maybe it is not firmware, maybe it is not software. Think of your experience today. It is your job to prove to the vendor that you have a dead AP on your hand, that you need to RMA. We believe that should be the network of the last decade. The network of the next decade truly should show you, hey, these 3 APs are failing. We believe it's a hardware issue, and here you go. We're shipping APs. Tell us which site you want it to go to, and by the way, and along the way, obviously a lot of our customers are on Twitter. I can tell you confidently and factually, our hardware failure rate is far below the industry average, but one AP that is RMA'd is one too many, and IT shouldn't have to prove to the vendors, level 1 TAC, level 2 TAC, and level 3 TAC saying, I have a hardware issue, can you send me an AP? None of that, right? The AI should assist you with that, right? So again, basically all of this sums up to, when we cannot address it in sort of a self-driving action, basically that's when we bubble up into Marvis Actions, right? So Marvis Actions itself continues to evolve. We're adding more and more use cases every day. We've actually added some of the anomaly stuff here. You could say, hey, I'm resolving this. Thank you very much. We got a radius issue going. We fixed the radius server. Life is good. The problem happened, at such and such a time. That's okay. What we do is we say, okay, that's good. You said you fixed the issue. Not good enough. We will validate that you added the missing VLAN, that you in fact did change out the bad cable, you in fact did change scope, reboot DHCP, whatever you did on the DHCP server. The AI engine will come back and say, now your ticket is closed, right? This is the driver assist part of the self-driving piece, right? So,
hey, Sudhir.
Hey, Sudhir. You can go.
Oh, no, Laurie, go ahead.
I have a question from Roel.
Mm-hmm.
And Roel asked you if you can look SFP problems or the stats, or only the Ethernet part of the EP.
Abhi or Wes, I want one of you guys to answer that question if you can. Abhi?
Yep. The answer to the second part of the question, yes, we do detect Ethernet errors today, and the SFP problems are coming soon.
Yeah. So the SFP is definitely part of the roadmap that we're working on. Thank you. Sorry, Jennifer.
I was going to ask you, the one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the Marvis actions are triggered by certain volumes of data, and it might not trigger with smaller volumes of data. So I'm just curious if you guys, especially knowing that you already have deployments that, obviously some of them are, small remote sites, it's several sites and then large campuses. Will you guys have some either type of baselining or setting to kind of figure out the size of a site and tune that a little bit?
It truly, we can show you Marvis Actions with a one AP site. We do baseline, and then that becomes the baseline for the site, and we learn and adapt. So basically, it doesn't matter what is the number of APs at a given site. Our efficacy is just as good. And we do have a lot of retail locations that have maybe 2 or 3 APs per site, even 1 AP per site. Yeah. Awesome. All right. This is to the question, Sam. One of the questions you were asking is Marvis SDK. This is a brand new thing we're launching today. We're super excited. Sunalini, I'm gonna ask you to take this. Maybe actually, Bob, why don't you start with just a little bit of high-level vision on Marvis SDK, and then Sunalini, I'll ask you to take this.
Yeah. So Sam, I think if you look what we're doing right now, right, we're extending Marvis across the Juniper portfolio and beyond Juniper. The other thing we're doing right now is bringing the client's view into the network. And what we do by bringing that client view, what that solves a particular problem when you mention LTE is, hey, when someone goes into a retail store and they call up the IT administrator and says, hey, all the users are complaining about their mobile app, the first question you have to figure out is whether or not is it a cellular or a Wi-Fi problem. So by bringing that client's view into Marvis, that is now allowing Marvis to basically get more granular on the root cause. And what it's really doing is saving travel time. We actually had a customer who had to fly all the way to California to figure out it wasn't a Wi-Fi problem, it was really a cellular problem. So the Marvis SDK is what's allowing us to start to answer those cellular questions. Am I having a cellular or am I having a Wi-Fi problem in the store? And Sunalini, you want to give them some demo here or actually show you what's in action now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Sudhir. So again, MFD is always about the first things that we launch, and it's always about industry first, especially for Mist. Marvis SDK, again, is another industry first where we're taking the client experience to the next level. So Sam, to your point, how do we know if the link is bad or what's impacting the client experience? What we've done with Marvis SDK is we have this SDK that sits on a device, and Android devices specifically currently, where we can get data directly from the device itself and feed that into our Marvis AI engine, feed that into our SLEs. So what you're seeing as a demonstration here is the Marvis SDK running on an Android Moto G device. We're able to tell you exactly the experience of the client as it sees the network. Now, we know other vendors have created or purchased other companies where they go and deploy overlay sensors to try and get that view of what is the view from the ground or from the client perspective. What we've done is go straight to the client. We don't need to deploy an overlay network. The clients themselves feed this data into our AI engine, into our SLEs. What you're able to get with this essentially is the view of, apart from the network seeing the clients and what our perceived RSSI is, we can also now tell you what is the view from the client perspective. And you can actually see where the data aligns and where it doesn't align. What we also provide in addition is, and going exactly to your question of LTU, we can show exactly when the client was on the Wi-Fi network and when the client is actually not on the Wi-Fi network, but on the cellular network, and give you a signal strength, again, from a client perspective, when it's on the cellular. So when your remote branch office calls in or the remote store calls in and says, hey, my app's not working, the Wi-Fi sucks, and we all know Wi-Fi is always the first finger to blame, we can actually now go into Marvis and say, hey, Marvis, what's happening with this client? And the source of data for Marvis to answer that question is this Marvis SDK, where Marvis now has the power to say, oh, this client experience was bad because it was A, not on the Wi-Fi network, B, it was on the cellular network, and C, while it was on the cellular network, the experience was pretty bad. Or if it was on the Wi-Fi network, even though the APs are saying life is good, they're transmitting what they're set to, what is the client perceiving of that same signal strength? So now you have, for the first time in the industry, the clients themselves talking to the network, providing that full feedback loop of what is the network thinking the client see versus what the clients are seeing, in addition to when the client is on Wi-Fi, when the client is on cellular. So the story Bob mentioned, it's a true story. Techs have gone on site to respond to this problem of, hey, why is the app bad? Is it an app server issue? Is it a cellular issue? Is it a Wi-Fi issue? Is it really a Wi-Fi roaming problem? Turns out it's not. And again, as we go into our SLE framework, right, we are able to tell you exactly what the issue is now based on the data coming in from the client directly, but even go into details of, is it, as we call it, device generic or device specific? So with the Marvis SDK, we're able to pull out not only, the device type, device OS everybody gets, but on Android, as you know, even getting to the detail of the device OS version or the radio characteristics is now possible. When we do this on Windows, on MAC addresses, we'll be able to get to driver versions. So when the typical question comes up to say, hey, go update your driver, we'll know exactly which devices are having issues and why that is. Is it a driver specific problem? Last but not least, the nirvana of it all. Why do clients make the roaming decisions they make, right? Network vendors do a lot of mechanization, in fact, even standards allow for, hey, how do we help clients make the right roaming decision? But you never know what the client is seeing. Why did the client go to the AP it went to? And now with this Marvis SDK, we're feeding into our AI engine the ability to see, okay, we know that these APs were the strongest for this client, but how did the client see those APs? So we can actually do a mapping of all the APs that the client is scanning for, and what is the client perception of the strongest AP it is hearing, and why it made a roaming decision. So when you have roaming issues, it's not just from a network perspective, even from a client perspective, now we can say, the client made a roaming issue or a roaming decision to go to this particular AP because of all the APs it heard, this was the best it could get to. So that's the part of the client SDK. It's going to help us take Marvis to the next level by having this full feedback from client to cloud for Wi-Fi to cellular, for device specific issues, driver related issues, as well as roaming decision clarity.
Now, Sam, let me just, on LTU, is your question whether or not we can detect LTU in the unlicensed band? Or are you talking about?
Yeah. This was completely not what I was asking. I was saying, show me where microwave ovens are hurting my users, or show me where I'm experiencing interference by LTEU, or show me where I've got a narrowband jammer going off in the Wi-Fi network, or something that I, as a Wi-Fi professional or even a reasonably competent help desk person, would want to know. Not where is my client failing on the LTE network.
Right. Yeah. So that will be in the RRM piece of the puzzle, right? So I mean, RRM is basically going to be breaking down all the interference into connected Wi-Fi, unconnected Wi-Fi, unidentified Wi-Fi. LTU, I suspect we will be able to identify it when it actually shows up in the band. This is really focused on the user experience, right? Most of our problems right now are end-to-end user experience on the cellular side.
Yeah, that piece, what you're talking about, Sam, we did that 4 years ago. Honestly speaking, that one, interference stuff and avoiding interference. Today, we're going into some of the most mission critical networks. And I think, as Bob said, the RRM piece and that adaptation around some of this stuff, because we have long-term listen and long-term memory, we're able to adapt that. I really don't believe, again, it's cute for IT engineers to be able to continue to see that, but what do we do about it ultimately is how do we avoid it, right? And so that's what we've been focused on.
And I would tell you, Sam, I think we are probably the only one. We have one person dedicated to RRM. We've been involving RRM since day one, since we started the company. RRM is still being involved right now. And that's what you saw with reinforcement learning. And yes, the interference detection stuff will be added to it all. We'll continue to evolve the interference detection piece of it.
Well, and so Sudhir, you said you've done that for 4 years, but I just got done asking Marvis, show me LTEU on the map, and it's not there.
Yeah, so the point is we are detecting and avoiding interference already, right? Why should people have to manually figure out where that is, and what are we going to do about it? Right? And that's where I feel trying to overcomplicate user experience with all the data that we see is probably the wrong way of going about it, right? So, am
I on mute? I would say, Sam, that is a fair question, and Marvis should be able to answer that question. And so we will add it to the list. And Marvis should be able to answer the question. Please show me what interference sources are in the network right now.
If I can jump in there real quick, and Sudhir, you were kind of pointing down a road that concerns me just a little bit. Whether there needs to be an expert mode that we can enable and disable, but that all of that data needs to be available for those people who are the experts and will go looking for it. I absolutely appreciate what you guys are doing with Marvis, and I think it's cutting edge. There's no question about that in my personal mind. However, the experts still need to be able to be the experts and make the changes and troubleshoot as experts without that middle system getting in the way between them and the data sometimes.
Jonathan, fair enough. We will specifically answer that question. Christmas comes every Wednesday at Mist. That's the whole process of how we've been able to be agile. So maybe in the next Wednesday release, you'll see where is my LTU interfering. I believe we actually already have certain Marvis commands that will show interference where it's happening, but we'll take that in advisement, right? So makes sense.